What are cool Qiuyuan's biggest pros and cons? That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So, quick 2.7 story spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you get to trial Qiuyuan during the story, and during that trial, you're actually able to read the entirety of his kit if you so choose. So even though he's not available in the Crossing Stars menu at the minute, you can still very much read his kit in-game. And from what we know, we can easily decipher what type of value he's going to have. For starters, he is going to be an amazing echo skill damage buffer. He's able to provide up to 30% of that stuff, which is going to make him really valuable for basically any echo skill damage DPS, which basically points him towards being the best in slot Galbrena and Phrolova teammate. He is going to be really good for this archetype, and I personally think that if you want to invest into this archetype as a whole, Qiuyuan is going to be the guy to go to. Now, I say this archetype as opposed to just Galbrena for a very specific reason that I'm going to delve into later, but for now, if Echo skill damage is right up your alley, then he's going to be well worth your astrites, because I personally don't think that Kuro Games is going to make a character better than him for this specific niche. After all, it's quite a particular way of playing. I should also add, I don't know if echo skill damage characters as a class are going to continue thriving. I don't know if Kuro Games is planning to add more of them, and if this is going to be a consistent, reoccurring niche of characters. If it is, that means Qiuyuan's future pull value could only bolster up from here. If it isn't, well then he's basically just going to be used with Galbrena and Phrolova. Otherwise, not really anybody else. So that's something to keep in mind. I will say that he has future potential, and him being the best echo skill damage buffer could actually be something that could benefit him in the long run if Kuro Games continues to opt into making these types of characters. But if they don't, well then he's likely just going to stay tied to those two characters. It is something to consider, but I would personally only get him based on his current value, and if his current value impresses you. I'm saying all this because he very much is really good at what he does. We're just gonna have to wait and see, is there going to be more use for what he does? But as of now, there is use for what he does, and he does it absolutely amazingly. For instance, he ends up being the new best in slot third slot teammate for Phrolova teams. That is really good, because Phrolova is ridiculously meta right now. Not only does she absolutely tear apart Whimpering Wastes like it's her playground, but she's also really good in TOA, especially in the later stages 3 and 4, because her longer rotation doesn't really suffer there, considering that we have 30 extra seconds in order to clear the floor. So, all things considered, Phrolova is kind of busted right now. The meta is in the palm of her hand, and Roshia is getting replaced in her teams. Yeah, the clown kid really can't catch a break, but at this point, is anybody surprised? So, with that in mind, if you want to see Phrolova's absolute best possible performance, then you're gonna have to stick Qiuyuan on the end of her team. And let me tell you, it is quite the nice upscale, because it means that it's going to definitively place Phrolova as the best DPS in the game. And personally, I think that if you're a support that's able to turn a character into the best DPS in the game, you have a lot of value. So, Qiuyuan, at least right now, has some guaranteed value in the fact that he's going to be best in slot for one of the best DPSs in the game, if not the best DPS in the game. And I personally think that makes him quite worth the astrites if you have Phrolova. He doesn't interfere with Cantarella's position in Phrolova's team, because she's still going to be the best second slot teammate. He's going to be the third slot in particular. And the reason why this is good is because while Roshia was indeed the best in slot for a while, she wasn't exactly the best in slot by some ridiculous margin. She was just a good alternative to Shorekeeper, while also serving as a means to increase Cantarella's own personal damage. However, with Qiuyuan around, you're able to have a third slot teammate that's far more substantial to Phrolova's own actual playstyle. So if you're an absolute Phrolova superfan, I highly advise that you go out of your way and get Qiuyuan, because he really is going to be a great upgrade for you. And like I said, Phrolova is in such a good meta position right now, it is worth the investment. And if you're ever worried about her falling off in TOA, first of all, I wouldn't really worry about it because it takes a very long time for DPSs to fall off in this game anyway. But even so, fair enough concern, just look at Whimpering Wastes. There is no way that they're going to make a character that is going to top her there. And in fairness, I would understand the argument of she's really broken there, she doesn't really need the upgrade, and that's also totally fair. This is the thing, you can still justifiably skip him. You will be totally right in thinking Phrolova is so good that she doesn't really need an extra push. Yeah, you're right, she is that good, she doesn't really need that additional push. But if you want to turn her into an absolute monster, you want to push her into that realm of just being utterly broken if she doesn't already feel good enough, well, then you're going to be very happy with what you get. Now, I've mostly been focusing on Phrolova first up until this point, because she is a stronger DPS than Galbrena. She is just more meta than her on the whole, and I understand that Qiuyuan is being made for Galbrena, but focusing on Phrolova first is quite frankly more of an important pro. However, moving on to Galbrena, yes, he is also going to be best in slot for her hypercarry teams, very much going to help her out, amazing buffs for her, and all around was designed with her in mind. So, if you want the absolute best possible Galbrena team, and with that being said, the strongest possible fusion team that you'll be able to play in the game, then Qiuyuan is going to be worth your time. If you're a Galbrena superfan, then yes, he is going to be able to provide that big benefit for you. I will say that if you already have a triple fusion team components, mostly Brant Wuthering Waves and Lupa together, then you're gonna have the damage required in order to compensate for not having Qiuyuan. It's pretty much going to work almost just as well. Not literally, Qiuyuan is still going to be better by a good amount, and it's still going to be worth pulling him if you care about an upgrade, but if you already have a triple fusion component, mostly Lupa, especially Lupa in this case, because you can get away with just putting Mortefi in Brant's place even if it is worse, well then you don't really need the guy. However, Qiuyuan is still going to absolutely be the definitive best in slot for Galbrena, and is going to be very strong for him. So, all things considered, he is best in slot for both of the characters in the niche that he serves. Okay, so we've established that Qiuyuan is a very good character, but what about his flaws? One of them is that he's definitely not really focused on damage as much. The reason why this is relevant is because it's not really so much of a flaw as much as it is different. And it's going to be a lot harder to DPS Qiuyuan at S0 than it would be for somebody like a Yuno or Brant, or characters that just naturally have a ton of damage weaved into their rotation. In fact, damage is the main selling point for those two characters, whereas in Qiuyuan's case, he's definitely a lot more on the buffing side, so this means that his value is a lot more heavily tied to his buffing. He's not really able to compensate for his niche buffs by just having a crap ton of damage, so you are really ideally going to be putting him in his main teams, in which he is good. Otherwise, you basically don't really have much of a use for him, because like I said, he can't really do anything else other than his buffs. It's not that he's gonna do no damage, it's more just he doesn't really do enough damage to justify playing around him in particular, whereas with those other second slot teammates that I mentioned, that's kind of a part of their gimmick. Whereas with Qiuyuan, he is definitely more on the buffing side, and I should say, the buffs that he provides are really good in turn. They definitely compensated for this, and I do think that this was a very conscious choice on Kuro's end, but it's not like he was done dirty, because they made sure that his buffs were good in turn. However, it can be argued that this is going to hurt his shelf life a bit. And moving on to that, his shelf value is questionable, because while he is a really strong echo skill damage buffer, his high value is going to last for as long as Phrolova and Galbrena last. He basically lives and dies with those two characters in terms of meta value, especially Phrolova. But for as long as those two are good, he's gonna be a really good pull. So all things considered, he's gonna be an amazing investment for at least his next two banners if you wanted me to make a prediction, assuming that the meta continues in the trajectory that it's currently been going in. And when you consider how ahead Phrolova is, you're basically not going to see her fall off anytime soon, unless Kuro gets really upset at Havoc characters and decides to really anti-shill them or something like that. But that's probably just not going to happen for multiple TOAs in a row, even if it were to happen for one or two in the future. In fairness, I did say at the start of the video, they could technically just keep making echo skill damage characters, and if they keep doing that, well then his value is only going to bolster from here. However, if we go under the assumption that only Galbrena and only Phrolova are going to be his main teammates, then he basically exists for as long as those characters exist. Now I would like to add, this isn't really anything new. Every support kinda has this. It's only recently that we've started to see them get mega flexible. Somebody like Juja also only has synergies with Carlotta, Jinshi, and if you really want to count them, Lingyang. This isn't anything new, it's just that, like I said, because characters have been balanced more around their damage, they've been so flexible, and they've been able to do multiple other things in other teams with other abilities that they have in their kit. Whereas with Qiuyuan, he's definitely got a more one-track design, and he definitely has a certain way that Kuro intends you to play. And I should also add that he is technically replaceable. The reason I don't really like this con is because, well, he's best in slot in both of his use cases, and by a good enough margin too, a pretty significant one for Phrolova, and a decent enough one for Galbrena. So this is a bit of a silly point. However, if you do already have Lupa from her last banner, I wouldn't necessarily pull for her now if you're looking for a Galbrena teammate, because Qiuyuan is literally just around the corner. But either way, if you already have one of those characters from their previous banners, then there's not really as much point in getting Qiuyuan. Kind of depends on your position. I'd say that if you have the astrites to spare and you want to really hone in on these teams, then he's absolutely worth it. But if you're kind of low on astrites, you don't need to force it. I think that's how I would put it. You won't be playing best in slot, but you'll get by just fine because these characters' alternate premium options are still really good. And in Phrolova's case, you can basically just use Shorekeeper or Roshi on the end, and you're still going to have a perfectly effective team. I honestly underrated Qiuyuan initially at first. He is a lot better than I initially gave him credit for whenever I first saw him in the livestream reveal. I really like the character, of course, and I really want to highly invest into him. I'm hoping to main him, actually. I love his design. He looks awesome. But all that aside, I do think that his kit is genuinely really good. It's just that, are you a particular type of player who can benefit from him? Like, he is the sort of character where, if you can benefit from him, he has an S tier account pull. If you can't benefit from him, well, literally, why would you get him? He is very much, get him if you have the characters for him, skip him otherwise. And you could argue that's the same case for basically any second slot teammate. Sure, he's less flexible than the likes of Brandt, but that doesn't make him bad. He is still very much good at what he does, and if you care about what he does, well, then he's an amazing character for you. Hopefully this video is able to tell you Qiuyuan's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out. I hope you're all excited to pull for your wuwa Yasuo.